Tyler Locklear has made quite the impression in his first week as a big leaguer, but is there a role for him once Ty France returns? We'll answer that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, June 17th, 2024. This is Tyson Miller and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, that's LOCKDON, to get yourself started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. All right, let's get into your questions here. We're going to start with Deep Hanky, who wants to know, if you had to pick 3 wins that have been the most critical this year so far, which ones would they be and why? Colby, want to kick us off?
The correct answer is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. To go from 5.5 games up to 8.5 games up in one weekend is more important than anything else the team has done up to this point.
Sure.
Now, granted, it's June 17th, so it's not like they've clinched the division or anything like that, but none of the wins we talk about today would have that effect. So, I think pretty much pick any game against Texas or Houston because right now this team is dominating their division, and that's why they have the 8.5 game lead. But there are some others that stand out. The game in New York against the Yankees, scoring 4 off of Clay Holmes, we didn't know it at the time, but salvage that series, get out of there with a split, was pretty massive. I think the game in Washington, that Sunday game where they were just kind of trying to get back home after the 10-day road trip, things hadn't gone their way. It looked like they were going to cruise to a victory and go home, 4-6, which not great, but better than, it was within the range of okay outcomes. But and then they get down early or they get down late in that one, but then they storm back, they win that game. I think that one's pretty big as well, just to kind of maintain the vibes, so to speak. And then, it really is pick any game from this weekend, I think is probably the big one. So I would say, I think probably either Sunday or Friday's game would probably be the other one. The Friday's game really puts Texas on their heels. They get out to that hot start and this is their chance to get right back in the race, right? And Seattle responds, and then their pitching just shoves for the next 8 innings, and it really puts Texas in a position where every little mistake that they make for the next 2 days could greatly impact the course of the rest of their season. So I do think you have to include one of the games from this weekend and then the game against New York. Pretty much any of the wins on that 10-day road trip, 10 games in 10 days, 3-city road trip, that counts because that's the hardest stretch of the season. So I think there are some ways to go here, but honestly, I do think that the correct answer is, if there is a correct answer to these things, is what happened this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's had the biggest impact on the standings by far. I would say, though, just in the spirit of the question, my mind goes to that last game in Toronto, because that road trip was awful. The first 2 games of that, yeah, exactly. That was the only win that I'll get to see in person this year. But that road trip had gone horribly. That series had gone horribly up to that point. To start the year, they were really, really struggling. They needed something there to kind of shift things in the right direction. And I think that game, and specifically Jorge Polanco making that catch over his shoulder to save the game, started to turn things around a little bit. They didn't really kick into high gear from that point forward, but it slowly started to push them into the right direction. I'd also mentioned the Garver walk-off against the Braves. I thought that was pretty huge to be able to win that game, which helped them win that series against a really, really good team in Atlanta. And then, yeah, you have to include at least one of these games from this past weekend. It feels like cheating to kind of include all three, but I do agree with you because, again, the impact that it ultimately had on the standings and where the Mariners are ultimately at this point as we talk right now is huge. But I would go with Friday for sure, because again, the Rangers get off to that hot start. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the way that game last year started, the one that Castillo started towards the end of the season against the Rangers, where the Rangers jumped on him and the Mariners weren't able to recover from that. This time they were able to hold the Rangers scoreless for the next 8 innings, and then they responded right away with the Garver 2-run home run to knot things up. I thought that kind of just set the tone for how the rest of that series went. So those 3 wins for sure. But I agree with you. I think the biggest 3 wins ultimately are the last 3 and the impact that's had on how things look right now in the ALS. Stu wants to know, I realize the sample size is small, but would you be comfortable seeing Tyler Locklear as an everyday player the rest of this year, provided he keeps this up, of course? All right, so we got a billion questions about Tyler Locklear, so sorry to those of you that didn't get your Tyler Locklear question answered. Stu was just the first one that I saw. And so
we're probably going to answer all of them.
We're gonna answer everything that you guys asked, essentially.
The answer to the question is hell no.
Why? Why is that?
Oh, I don't know. It's 44% strikeout rate. Screams something that's sustainable for the rest of the year. No, it's not. We all know it's not. Come on, guys. The guy's got like a 270 on base. Like,
I mean, it's a week. It's a week, but yeah. But on the flip side, it's
where there is the least amount of information about the guy there will ever be.
Right. Yeah. Look, the answer here is very boring. The answer ultimately here is we don't have enough information to say really one thing or the other. We don't have enough information.
You strike out 44% of the time.
For
you're
1
not
week.
An everyday player.
For 1 week.
You're not an everyday player.
For 1 week.
Simple.
Who cares?
It's very simple. Get the wall scraper home run. Cool. First one. It counts still.
Yeah, yes.
Obliterates a slider that was hanging right in the middle of the plate. I don't know if this guy can hit velocity at all. I know he can hit a slider because he's done that his entire minor league career. He's really handled sliders just fine. Can he handle the top end velocity? I don't know. I still haven't seen that yet. Him handle just great velocity. Even the home run against Crochet, that was the only changeup he threw on the day. It was 90 miles an hour in the middle of the plate. So can he hit a mistake? Sure. Is he torching fastballs right now? No, I mean, he doesn't look like it's there's no chance against that pitch, but it's not exactly like he's just hunting them and destroying those fastballs. And, again, he's striking out so much. He's not walking. He's striking out a ton. His entire WRC plus is predicated on 2 homers and a double, which cool. You've gotten more from Tyler Locklear than I think was reasonable to expect. It's nice that he's managed to kind of keep you afloat as you wait for Ty France to get back, and I hope he continues to do that. Is he an everyday player right now? Absolutely not. No, not even close. So the answer is no. The answer to your question about what do you do when Ty France gets back? Who do you send down? You send down Tyler Locklear. It's not a question.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no information here that suggests that he's an everyday player yet. That would give me even the slightest modicum of confidence that he's an everyday player right now. But I also think you're overvaluing 1 week's worth of strikeouts a little bit here in your assessment.
The week where he gets challenged more than after this, they're going to start pitching him away. They're going to start pitching him up and in with the velocity.
It's just 1 week of strikeouts. I don't know if we should necessarily label him as he has a strikeout issue off of 1 week.
Do you think he's a better player right now than Ty France?
No.
The discussion's over then. There's nothing left to talk about.
Okay, yeah. I'm just saying, I totally agree with you, except for the notion that he just has a strikeout. I don't know if he does. I don't think
strikeout problem right now.
Okay, for 1 week. I don't know if we can just say
that's
that.
the only sample size we have. I'm just supposed to assume he's not going to strike out. He's not going to have a strikeout problem because it's only been 1 week.
I'm just saying that we need more information to say such things like you're saying. But
he's not better than Ty France. He's not better than Luke Raley. He's not better than Mitch Garver.
That's ultimately what this comes down to, right? He's not like I don't have any information here to confidently say he should be playing over those guys. That you have to do something else with your roster in order to fit Tyler Locklear onto it.
Right. It's not a fit.
Right.
Just learn from the first week of Jonathan Clase, learn from the first week of Ryan Bliss. Does that mean that those guys will never be big leaguers? No. Does that mean that, Locklear can't come up later this year and also help you, like in September or something like that? No, not necessarily. It just means right now he's not when you're healthy, he's not one of your 13 best players. And so he shouldn't be on. You don't try and force a backup first base only onto this roster.
The other thing too is like Ty France was your hottest hitter before he got hurt. He was running a 199 WRC plus for like the last 2 weeks before he got hurt, something like that.
Right now, your second best hitter is, oddly enough, Mitch Garver.
Well, and look, you need to use this time. I mean, it's great on a multitude of levels that France is somehow going to be able to make his way back, supposedly, shortly after his 10 days on the IL are up. Mm-hmm. That's especially important here because you need to gather information. You need to figure out if Ty France can be a part of this thing or not for the rest of the year.
And next year. Yeah, as well. But especially for the next, 5 or so weeks, you need to figure out, like, do I need to go and get a first baseman at the deadline or not? All right. We are going to answer some more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and PrizePicks. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKDON, and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer by making a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of the PrizePicks community today. Tonight, I'm taking Jaylen Brown more than 18.5 points and Daniel Gafford more than 10 points plus rebounds. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to Mailbag Monday here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. The Mariners are off today, but they get back after it tomorrow in Cleveland against the Guardians. You can catch all the action on the Mariners' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Let's get back into your questions. We got one here from P. Mells, who asked, I know the M's wanted to get Garver some time behind the dish, but do you have any insights why it is always with Kirby and not any other starting pitcher? So they actually talked about this on the Fox broadcast. Aaron Goldsmith and AJ Przenski, they talked about this on Saturday. Scott Service had told Goldie that the reason that they're doing it specifically with Kirby is because he's the quote-unquote easiest to catch for Garver because of how much Kirby is in the strike zone, which is a little weird considering that Kirby throws like a billion pitches. But again, because of the elite command, they feel that he is the easiest to catch. Mariners to the Moon wants to know, why in the world did the Mariners DFA Tyson Miller over arms like Edward Bizardo? Is there anything in the metrics of the arms that chose to keep him that make it make sense? Or was it just a mistake, plain and simple? Yeah, I think this was a big oopsie on the Mariners front office point. Now, is it such a big oopsie that it's so devastating to the bullpen? They wouldn't be in the position right now with the bullpen if they had Tyson Miller. No, they would still need help in the bullpen with or without Tyson Miller. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, like at the time we talked about this when they DFA'd Miller, we were like, that's not the best option there to DFA. I think it was when they were in Minnesota, right? When they did it and Kirby Snead was on the team. It was like,
he's not worse than Kirby Snead. The other thing too is like, did that potential, like if they had Tyson Miller still, would they have still traded for Mike Bauman, right, and traded Blake Hunt, or would you still have Blake Hunt if you still had Tyson Miller, right? And you know how we feel about that whole situation as well.
By the way, Blake Hunt's been terrible in Baltimore.
Sure, yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, not that it means anything. I mean, Bauman certainly has had his moments, both good and bad, with the Mariners, but yeah.
Next question here from Andrew. Bigger priority at the deadline if you can only choose one, upgrading the offense or bolstering the bullpen?
At the end of the day, I'm going to trust Jerry and Justin to patch the bullpen. Like,
sure.
Maybe they're still going to be an arm short or whatever, but they will find a way to make that work because they always have. So, like, which one do I give priority to? The offense, because that's where most of their focus should be. Sure. But it doesn't mean they should ignore the bullpen. The correct answer here is both. They need to treat both of these as massive.
That's not the spirit of the question.
I know, but we live in reality. So can the Mariners acquire a better offense and a better bullpen? Yes, of course they can. They could do it in the same trade. Like it doesn't even require two separate deals. So yeah, which one would I prioritize? Still the offense.
Right.
So, I
like scoring runs personally.
Scoring runs makes it a lot easier on your starting pitching because, we saw like not even good Luis Castillo, not even good George Kirby just manhandle the Rangers this weekend. So, and then we saw like top tier Logan Gilbert to kind of put those other two guys to shame. But so like we know how good this rotation is. And we also know that like in a playoff situation, like Brian Woo's going to the bullpen. And in the first couple series, Bryce Miller's probably going to the bullpen. Now we'll see. Like if knock on wood, Santos has another setback and he's not coming back this year, then you can't really rely on him. And I don't love the idea that you're relying on Logan Evans to be something, in the bullpen here in the next few weeks. So you need both. You absolutely need both. But if you tell me I could either get like the big bat or a high leverage arm, I'm going to take the big bat because also he's going to impact me for more than 20 innings. Whereas like if I go get Tanner Scott or whatever, right, that guy's going to throw 25 innings for me. They're going to be 25 pretty big innings, I'm sure, but it's still 25 innings. Whereas the bat I'm going to get, he's going to give me 200 plate appearances, 250 plate appearances. He's going to play in 50 games. So just in general, you prioritize the bat over the reliever. But for this team specifically, I still think they could really use a big bat. And we'll see. We'll see what Polanco looks like when he comes back. We'll see if Garver can continue to do what he's done. Dominic Canzone's had a pretty sneaky good June, so maybe he's finally starting to turn a corner for the first time in his entire career. So we'll see what they get out of these guys. Josh Rojas had a good weekend. Maybe he's starting to figure things out again. Julio's had a pretty good couple weeks here. So, there's a lot of things where maybe you don't need the big bat and maybe you can then shift your focus to getting the elite reliever or whatever. But as things stand right now, you need offense more than you need relief help. So I would focus on the offensive addition.
You should get the big bat no matter what the rest of this offense does. Get too much. How about that? That'd be great. Yeah. All right. We're going to answer a couple more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the M's and the Guardians starting tomorrow on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Colby, just a moment ago, you mentioned Logan Evans. Well, now we have a Logan Evans question. MC wants to know, when are we going to see Logan Evans in a Mariners uniform? Kind of already talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think when we talked about it, I said probably July 1st, somewhere around there. When they did a similar thing with Edwin Diaz, it took Diaz about 3 weeks worth of him pitching out of the bullpen before they called him up. I don't know how long it took for Brash. Can't remember how long it was for Brash, but I would think, I would think probably similar timeline. So we're getting closer to that point. So I would look at around July 1st for Evans to get called up. Maybe it's earlier. Plus they still have 2 open spots on the 40-man roster, so that's a pretty easy move for them to make there as well, to add him to the 40-man.
Right. So I think 2 weeks or so. It could happen at any time, and it wouldn't be a huge shock. But there's still some things that Evans hasn't done, in his career, like pitching back-to-back games. Pitch 3 times in 4 days, go and, just come in the middle of an inning and get 2 outs and then just be done. Like in his last outing, he did get 4 outs. So that is a hurdle where, he came in, got an out, sat down, went back out, got another out. And that one should be the easiest hurdle to clear because that's literally your job as a starter. Pitch, sit down, go back out and pitch. So, and I know the transition to the bullpen statistically has gone well. But I still think once we see him go back-to-back games, I think that's when we get to really start to assume that he's going to be up in the next, after he goes back-to-back games, he'll probably be down for a couple days and then they'll call him up. So, we'll see. It's possible that they don't ask him to go back-to-back. They just think they need the help bad enough that they're going to call him up. And, if they are going to call him up earlier, it might be on a Brian Wu day where they think, what if Wu has to be done after 4?
Right.
And so we'll go to Evans for 2. And that, so it could be Wednesday, when Wu's scheduled to start. But I do think what's most likely to be the case, and I do think what's probably the best way for them to do this would be around July 1. So sometime next week at the earliest, I think would be the best time to do it. But I'd be pretty surprised if we didn't see him before the All-Star break.
Yeah, he has appeared in 4 games as a reliever so far. His first appearance was on June 4th. He actually went 2 innings, faced 10 batters in that game. Then made his next appearance on June 8th, so 3 off days in between. And then June 11th, June 14th was his last outing, so he's probably going to actually make an appearance tonight.
Right. And if he makes an appearance tomorrow, Arkansas might not play tonight. I don't know off the top of my head, but whatever. Yeah. Because they're still and he's not going 3 innings or anything like that. He's going an inning for the most part. He's gone 2, I think 1 1/3, and then 1.
Yeah. And the other 2. Yeah.
Right. So it's not like he's gone 3 innings where it's like, okay, he has to be down for a couple days. No, if you're a reliever, you get 4 outs one night, you need to have some availability the next day. You just can't be completely down for 3 days after you pitch every single time. Yeah. So,
Arkansas doesn't play tonight. So tomorrow, I think we'll see him, and then we'll see if he can pitch, maybe on 2 days rest.
Right.
Or just a day's rest.
Right. It's you go an inning on Tuesday, then you're going to sit Monday or Wednesday, and then on Thursday, you're going to go an inning or whatever. And then you maybe take Friday, Saturday off, or I guess whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then you're still looking for those back-to-back days. I think once he goes back-to-back, that's a pretty good sign that the Mariners think he's ready to go.
Yep. Last question of the day comes from Jace, who wants to know, do you think Jerry and Justin value the slight discount of waiting closer to the deadline to acquire impact players, or is it more likely the few teams that are out of it are asking for unrealistic packages? I think it's a multitude of things. I think, one, the Mariners are just trying to gather information right now. Like, what do we absolutely need? Because again, like we talked about with the Ty France thing, like they need to figure out if Ty France can be a part of this or not, right? They're only going to find that out once he gets back from injury, and they're going to need time to figure out if he can stay hot at the plate, because that's the most important thing. Same with Jorge Polanco. Like they got to figure out if Polanco can contribute. If not, 1, they're going to be probably looking for a middle infielder, and 2, they're probably going to be trying to look to dump his contract in a deal as well. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, that they're just kind of, that's only going to come with time. The other thing too is like, I think teams right now, they're just trying to figure out who they are, especially in the National League, where there's literally only 2 teams that are out of it. Only 2 right now. They're just straight up, they're out. Like, because even the
Rockies,
the Mets have won 5 in a row, so now they're in the thick of things. It's like 9 teams that are like within 2 games of one another right now in the National League. It's insane. So right now, a lot of teams are just trying to figure out who they are, and they saw what the Diamondbacks did last year, right? Just get in, and you never know what might happen when you get in. So they're probably looking at their pieces. Even a team like the Mets are probably looking at like Pete Alonso and determining like, is trading him for whatever we can get worth more than maybe taking a shot at making a run in October? Like, can we just use Pete Alonso more than whatever we could possibly get for him? Maybe.
Yeah, I could see something like a Luis Castillo trade like break in the next week and not be like overly shocked. But I think that's not like, that's not like the dam breaking at that point, like we like to think. I think we're not going to see, aside from like the White Sox, they're kind of an outlier. I don't think we're going to see any like significant, like what we would determine to be impact players traded until about a week after the All-Star break, because like you said, basically the entire National League, they're not selling right. It makes no sense for them to sell right now.
Yeah.
So if half the game, just literally no interest in selling, it doesn't make sense for us right now when we could just do this in a month and get similar returns. That's going to shut things down pretty quick. So, you're looking at Oakland, you're looking at Chicago, you're looking at the Marlins, you're looking at the Rockies. So like there's a ton on that Rockies team you want either. So it's just pretty much everybody thinks they're still in it. And even there's even going to be some dumb teams, for example, like the Houston Astros, who are like, oh no, we're still in it. So we're going to go trade. We're going to go, empty our farm system a little bit more and go get some starting pitching and really make a run at this. And it's like, maybe it works for the Astros, but there's going to be teams like that. There are going to be teams who are in denial about where their roster stage is at, because to them,
potentially Toronto could be that team.
Right.
Yeah.
Potentially staying in it long enough to draw crowds, pennant chase crowds. That's going to be worth more to their ownership group in particular than it is to the front office. They're going to be like, well, we can get this like lottery ticket prospect, or we can keep this guy and we'll have, 32,000 people here because we're only 3 games out of a wild card spot on September 2.
Right.
Even though we're, a very mediocre club who has no shot of winning anything significant. So yeah, it's just, I think it's right now, it's just, you have a league full of teams that are not necessarily afraid to pull the trigger on anything, but they're just a little bit like, let's wait and see, because, a week can change our fortunes significantly. Right now, we're still at that point where a week can change your entire season.
Yeah. And again, teams saw what the Diamondbacks did last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you just get in, anything can possibly happen.
Right.
From a operational standpoint, you can also sell fans on that hope as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.